Great. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to day one of our first ever LMK TMF Career Week. I'm so excited to be kicking things off with my colleagues here, Jen and Tap. But before we dive into your questions, which you can submit at any time during the next 45 minutes, just feel free to drop any of those questions into the comment section on our LinkedIn post. But before we jump into those, I want to start just with a quick round of introductions, just so that you can get to know a little bit about us and learn about our own personal career journeys here. So I'll get things started. I'm Jackie Morrill. I'm the Executive Director of TMF Education at LMK. I've been in the TMF space now for, over 11 years, and will admit to all of you guys that I certainly did not grow up dreaming about being a TMF professional. I graduated from college with a double major in biology and psychology. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew that I loved science, wanted to help people, and ended up stumbling across the research coordinator role. So I worked as a coordinator at a couple of the Boston area hospitals for almost 4 years, where I helped to enroll patients on clinical trials before I moved into a trial coordination role at one of the biotech companies in Cambridge. After 3 years there, I was approached actually about moving into a new subdivision of our clinical operations department that was solely focused on TMF and document management. So I accepted that offer, moved into that role, and have been fully in the TMF ever since. That was back in May of 2013. I came on board with LMK in this 8.5 years ago as one of our TMF consultants before moving into leadership, helping to grow the business, and then most recently have shifted my focus solely to TMF training and education, and have been helping to establish that business line and grow those services within LMK. So that's just a little bit about me. I'll now hand it over to Jen if you want to get just a quick summary about how you ended up where you are.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you. My name's Jennifer Langelier. I am currently a functional line manager with LMK. I've been in clinical research for about 20 years, just a little over 20 years. 18 of those have been in trial management, mostly as a CTA, for about 15 years. After being a CTA for some time, I was asked to be on an acute remediation team for the company I was contracting for. I really didn't want to get away from my CTA work. I really like working on global studies and things like that. But what a great thing that I got to join TMF, because if we look at where TMF is today and everything we need to know, it was kind of like being in the right place at the right time. So I'm really glad that I got to do that. I've been with LMK for 6.5 years. I started as a support analyst, and then I became a project manager. And most recently, I am now a functional line manager working with our support analysts. I really love my job and helping guide them through their careers. But I've been with TMF for a while, and I'm excited to talk to you today about soft skills.
Awesome.
Except for you,
Thanks.
Tap.
Yeah, thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Jackie. Hi, everyone. This is Tapaswini. I'm really passionate about clinical research, and I've done my master's in biotechnology. I have like more than 5 years experience working at TMF, and I started as a record associate and then as a TMF specialist. And with LMK, I have been working as a TMF support analyst. Uh, During my past 2 years, I have been more focused on indexing, QC, and migration. And I've been working with the TMF completeness reviews. And so far, the journey has been wonderful, and I'm looking forward to today to have all your questions. And thank you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to seeing everyone's questions come in. And I love what you said, Jen, too, just about just how much the TMF space has changed. It's just amazing to me how it's just really become such a focus of the clinical research space, and how people are finally seeing, I think, what many of us on this call have probably seen for a while, just the importance of it. And I really I love how TMF has become kind of a viable career path. I feel like for so many years when I was first in industry, TMF and filing was kind of looked as entry level or a stepping stone. And I think it's just fantastic now to see that there are so many opportunities for growth and advancement, even staying within the TMF arena. That I know that's something that we're passionate about at LMK. And as you can see, we kind of all have different journeys that have kind of ended us up in this space. But again, I just love to see the growth and the opportunities. So again, just a reminder to everyone, if you do have questions for us, feel free to drop those in the comment section on our LinkedIn post. We do have some questions prepared and things that we've been thinking about around TMF soft skills, which is the focus of today's live stream. So we can jump into those. Let's see. Give it a minute or two to see if anyone has any questions that pop in. And if not, then we can just dive into ours. All right. All right. So we'll get things started with one of our questions here. So what do you guys think is the most important TMF soft skill for a TMF professional or for someone looking to get into the TMF and making that a career? What's one of the most important soft skill for them to master and why? We can kind of all share our thoughts on this one.
Yeah, actually, I think it depends on the job level. If it's for an entry level, I think the time management is most important. And when you are like in the mid or in the upper level, I think the communication is the most important part because you need to engage all the stakeholders to achieve the TMF compliance and ensure the continued inspection readiness all the time. Uh, Actually, it depends on the role, honestly. But communication is tough for me at this point of time because there are many forms of communication. It also depends on, like it includes a multiple kind of communication, like active listening and you're understanding the need of the person you're communicating with. And so effective written and verbal communication is also very important. It's not to confuse everyone with a lot of communication or not to be too little communication. So yeah, somewhere it should be balanced. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing that I know that something that you meant, active listening is really important. It's something that I've learned to do much better. I'm one that is a talker who does go on and on at times. I really think communication is very important, and there's so many different parts of the communication that are there. But I do want to point out active listening is really important, especially like as a functional manager, understanding what the people you work with need, or even as a project manager or whether it's a line manager, it's just making sure you understand what people need, what they want, how you can help them. So great point there, Tom.
Yeah, and I love that communication is kind of what came top of mind here because I think when people think about TMF or document management, people instantly go to, oh, we just sit in front of our laptops or historically in a file room, kind of tucked away from the world,
Right.
just filing documents, doing QC reviews. But I think that communication piece really is absolutely critical because there's so many different stakeholders and people that have responsibilities when it comes to TMF management that might not even realize it. There's a lot of people, I think, that have been in clinical research for a long time that it's TMF documentation. Oh, that's a clinical operations responsibility. I don't have to do anything in that as a data manager or a biostatistician. I think we're really seeing the space kind of move away from that very siloed approach to TMF. And now that we're into the eTMF space and everyone can kind of file documents and see what's in the TMF, we're really trying to get a lot more people involved. So that communication piece really does become critical in kind of getting people on board, understanding kind of what they need to do, how they need to do it. Obviously, I'm a big advocate here for the training piece. And I think having a well-trained team that we're delivering kind of targeted trainings that are very like role specific. And I'm going to tell you what you need to know to be able to do your job effectively and hopefully get you on board and compliant when it comes to TMF. So I love that you guys both have raised the communication piece, because I do think that that's something that often is overlooked or unexpected for people that are coming into TMF. That's like, oh, all I'm going to do is just sit and file documents all day. And there's so much more to it than that. So thank you guys both for some insights there. Let's see if we have other questions coming in. Anything? Oh, great question. So, what TMF soft skills have been critical to your career success? And this will be a good one, because I think we all kind of have slightly different journeys that we've taken. And for mine, so I can start this off and just say, like, I think it's changed as my role has changed. I think when I was a coordinator, that like time management piece and being able to effectively kind of prioritize was really critical, because I had a lot of different things on my plate and competing priorities. And I think we find that a lot in the TMF space, that there can be oftentimes feels like you're kind of firefighting, that there's always something that needs to be done yesterday. And so really being able to kind of effectively like manage time and look at like, okay, what are all these different priorities and things that I need to achieve, and kind of be able to order those in a fashion that gets everything done when it needs to get done. That was really critical for me early on. As I've moved more into the consulting and leadership space, I would definitely go back to that communication piece, really being mindful about how I was communicating, whether it was to clients, whether it was to people on my teams, really making sure that I'm giving them the information that they need to do their job, and also to do what I need them to do. Because I think sometimes with TMF, I don't think sometimes, most of the time with TMF, when you go and approach people about documentation and filing, no one's excited about it. This is not the most exciting part of clinical research. We might feel differently, but I think more broadly, people that are running clinical trials are not generally excited about documentation, even though we understand the importance of it. So really making sure that we're not just kind of throwing a ton of information at them, that we're really giving them exactly what they need to be successful, and also just being an advocate, and I think being also a team player and making sure that you show all of your stakeholders that we're here to make your life easier. It's kind of, I like to call it a TMF cheerleader sometimes, having that kind of excitement and enthusiasm, and really coming at it from a point of collaboration. I'm not just going to give you a to-do list or a list of metrics that are in the red and tell you, you need to fix this. It's like, no, let's do this together. Like, let's figure out a way to get this stuff accomplished. So that's my 2 cents, but I don't know if Jen and Tap, if you guys have anything to add to that from your journeys.
What have been? I'm just double checking on the. Sorry, I'm double checking on the question. What TMF? Some of the. I mean, and I agree with everything you're saying there, Jackie. One of the things I can say is, like, you know, and I know this is probably an answer to one of our other questions, but you know, like, as a, you know, like you said, let's face it, people, you know, don't love the TMF as much as we do. Not that we, I mean, it's our job, but I mean, I think they just need to understand better. And I think you're right. Part of that is just getting them the message as to why it's important, and why, you know, documenting every little thing that we do is so important to telling the history of the, you know, telling the story of the trial, and most importantly, protecting, you know, protecting the safety of our subjects as well, and the data, the integrity of the data that we gather as well. So, but I think you made some really good points there. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree with Jen and Jackie. Yeah. I mean, you guys covered almost everything. Yeah.
All right. All right. So we got another comment coming in here. So found it important to create a safe or comfortable place for communication. Team approach is very important. I would agree with that, because I think TMF is one of those areas where there is some degree of people don't know what they don't know. There are a lot of functions that haven't had TMF responsibilities historically. So I'm always the big advocate, and it sounds a little bit cliche, but like, there are no stupid questions. There's nothing that you can come to with me that I'm going to judge you for. I'd rather get it all out in the open and kind of get that really accurate gauge of where everyone is on my team, whether that's my clinical study team, or if I'm managing a team of support analysts, CTAs, whatever your role is. I think that's really important as here to create that safe space where it's like, it's okay if you don't know something. It's okay if you're performing TMF QC and you come across a document that you've never seen before. I've been in clinical research for 17 years, and there's still things that people bring me that I'm like, ooh, I've never seen that. I sometimes like to look at the TMF space as a little bit of being like a detective, that like we have to do some digging sometimes. Even people who've been in the space for 15, 20 plus years, like you are always going to come across things that you haven't seen or don't know instantly. So just making sure that everyone understands that. I know I've heard some companies do like office hours where people can bring questions, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, anything else for you guys to add?
I think it's an excellent point. Just all around, just making sure that people do understand or actually us understanding what we need to gather for them. So I think that's some of the most important information we have to take into account is, like you said, the diversity of how many different positions there are, and how even if it doesn't seem like it's very important, that one document can be the most important. And I do agree that that documents come up all the time. There are new types of documents that might need to be added to the document list that weren't there, or we do see a different format of a document that we haven't seen before. So those kind of things happen all the time. So I mean, like you said, there's no silly questions. And look, there's a lot of people who are at different levels in the TMF. Some people have been here for years, some people are just starting out. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges when you start is learning all the different document types, but that's going to take time, and that just takes time with experience. So, but it's really important that you mention that it's changing all the time. So
Yeah.
questions or dumb questions, they're all pertinent.
Yeah. 100%.
So.
All right. Let's see what else we get. All right, so we've been talking a lot about communication, but Jen or Tap, do you guys have any kind of specific examples of when you've had to leverage communication skills in order to be successful in whatever role you were in the TMF space?
Sure, I have some information on that. I mean, obviously, let's face it, as Jackie had said previously, most people that we do interact with don't love the TMF like we do. And communication skills are really important when it comes to engaging with the stakeholders, particularly with upper management or leadership and functional areas, that might not be as familiar with the TMF. So I know that in the past we've had to justify why we need more resources or for the TMF, or for functional areas we've had to train certain functional areas on the importance of the TMF and their responsibilities with those documents, and why and how to execute their responsibilities. Personally, as a project manager, I've found that communication skills are important for things like training, design, and delivery. I mean, when you look at a team of people, you need to choose a form of communication that fits most of your staff. Um, or you should use multiple forms of communication and training to assure that the message is understood and received by different people, just because, again, different people learn in certain ways. So sometimes it's just, looking at your team, thinking of the best way to communicate your training or to communicate, your message to your team. It's really important to understand, again, and, design those trainings or messages in a way that it's going to reach every person, or, have a couple of different ways to do that so that you're sure to reach everyone.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's definitely something that I consider a lot in the training and education space. I think we're definitely seeing the training space evolve a bit. I think within TMF, but also outside of the TMF space as well. I think we're now seeing people's attention spans kind of get shorter and shorter. So I know in the training space, we're trying to get kind of creative with how can we most effectively communicate the information that people need. There's been kind of a movement towards more of that like just in time training approach, like really trying to give people just that information that they need to know to do like one particular task, say that it's more of that bite size kind of approach
Right.
to training and educating. So I think that that's when it comes to effective communication, knowing your audience and of knowing what they need to accomplish. I think for a long time, TMF training or webinars, all of that tended to be this very kind of like broad strokes. Like I'm going to tell you everything there is to know about TMF, and you lose people very quickly that way. So definitely thinking about the most effective way to communicate to your particular audience. And like you said, Jen, different training modalities. Is that giving people quick reference cards, or is that like one-to-one training sessions? Is that kind of detailed communications via like email, or what is that ever? It can take so many different shapes, but I think being very mindful kind of what you're trying to get across is really important.
Absolutely.
Are there any recommendations of websites or courses to help build soft skills, focusing on written and verbal communication? Ooh, that's a great question. So years ago, and I don't remember offhand, this is something we can actually follow up with you offline, Jess. Um, we had our whole team of project managers at LMK. Jen, you might have been a part of this. Do a communications workshop. We were all together in person, and we had someone come and help us kind of learn how to more effectively communicate. We
Yep.
brought examples of emails that we had written that got picked apart and reviewed as a part of that training. So
Yep.
I know that there are workshops and things available out there. Like I said, I don't have any that come top of mind. Like I said, I know we've done one, but I can't think of it. But that's something that we could certainly share and pull together, maybe even as a post, as a follow up to this session. We'll do a
That's a
little bit
great
of digging
idea.
and find some things that we would recommend.
And that was a great, and it really, I mean, communication, um, a great exercise that we did because it did just point out sometimes it's just the fundamentals of communicating where, like you said, everybody has a certain way of doing things. And I just thought that was um, a great exercise that we did where it was like really just like understanding what's the best way we can communicate and what are the fundamentals and what can we follow so that you're being as effective as possible. So that I think you're right, those are some of the great ones, and it's a great idea that we share some of that information from that's a
Yeah, and
great
I
idea.
do love, yeah, taking it back to like just you said, like just kind of general skills that apply across the board, that it's not necessarily just specific to TMF. I know,
Right.
like Jen said, there were some great takeaways from that, just how to communicate more effectively, just in everyday communications as we're sending
Yep.
personal emails or communicating with loved ones, things
Yes.
like that. I think this is so much more broad than just um, communication specifically related to TMF. I think we can apply some of those other um, more generalized communication
Yeah.
skills to our everyday jobs.
Absolutely.
All right. So this is one that we've touched on a little bit, but we can provide a little bit more color around this. So one of the biggest challenges I know that we see in the TMF is getting stakeholders to recognize their TMF responsibilities. This is something, so at LMK, we do a lot of consulting engagements and work with a broad range of different clients, which I think for us is really nice. We're spoiled in that we get to kind of see many different approaches to TMF management, just honestly, even to clinical trial management across the industry and different indications, things like that. So, but across the board, I will say one of the things that we do see is this challenge with getting stakeholders on board. Like I said, I think historically TMF has been something that everyone really looks at as like, oh, that's ClinOps, or if you have a TMF or document management team, oh, that's something they can take care of everything when it comes to TMF. So getting those stakeholders on board in the different functional areas can definitely be an uphill battle. And I'm sure that's something that you guys may have seen as well. So do you have some strategies that you've used to kind of get them On board.
And one of the things that I've noticed before, is something I just touched on in one of my last comments, is that it's important to remind the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, of the fundamentals of the TMF, that the TMF does tell the story of the entire trial. This is where you're documenting all your decisions, all your information, all the information you need for the data, safety, everything, for the safety of the subjects and the reliability of the data. This is where we're documenting it all. After the trial, this is going to be the only record of the entire trial. It's really important to stress. That's one of the most important keys to me here, is just to explain the importance of their role in the TMF. Even if it's one document, we need to make sure they understand how important that is. I think that's one of the most important ones. Or providing concrete examples, of like the importance of the TMF, cite some regulations, remind them of, regulatory findings that were related to the TMF in the past, year. That those things are posted all the time. Another good idea is mock inspections. You can ask them, questions about the study that they work on, and then ask them to show you the documentation that backs things up. So, I mean, doing a mock inspection and making sure that those functional lines are understanding what their responsibilities are when we do need, so when those things happen. And I mean, being a team player is important. If you show that you're there to make their life easier, you're really just trying to help them get their job done. That's an important thing to do. And lastly, I mean, I'm sure there's others too that I've missed, but try and keep a positive tone. I mean, don't come across, you don't want to sound like you're nagging someone or scolding someone for the way they do things. You want to make sure you're being positive to them and saying, oh, thank you for pointing this out. These are some of the things we want to do. And just, so those are just some of the things that we can do, just to make sure. But again, I still think the fundamentals and letting them know how important their roles are is one of the most important things we can do to get for the TMF stakeholders.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point there, Jen, just because we all live and breathe TMF. And for us, it seems, I think sometimes it's so basic that, of course, the TMF is important. We know why this is critical. We're devoting all day, every day to making sure that these TMFs are complete, that they're accurate. We know that. But sometimes, I know I'm guilty of this, I'll forget that not everyone knows that. Not everyone lives and breathes this every day. So I think it is really getting that very basic message across of like this, sometimes even starting with just what the TMF is. And
Right.
like you said, that this is what tells the story. When everyone on that study team has moved on and is working on other studies or has left an organization, this is the only thing left to tell us that story of the trial and to start to finish. And that's why this is so absolutely critical. And I do love the piece about mock inspections. That's one thing I found kind of in my tenure in this space, that can be something, and not in, I think sometimes you hear mock inspections or mock audits and it can sound a little bit scary or daunting, or like we're trying to like punish people or call them out for not doing what they need to do. But I think with the right approach to a mock inspection and a mock audit, that can really be sometimes what bridges that gap for people, particularly in the functional areas that haven't historically had a lot of TMF responsibilities. That it's like, you'll get anyone on a study team that can tell you and speak to their role and what they do every day and what their responsibilities are. And, oh, I have to do this and that. But then when you ask them to show you evidence of that, like, I can't just take you at your word telling me that you've done X, Y, and Z. I need to actually see evidence of that. That's sometimes when I've seen that kind of light bulb moment for people, that it's like, oh, I get it now. Like, I can tell you all these things, but we're not just going to an auditor or an inspector, or when you go to file with the FDA, they're not just going to take your word for it. They want to see proof that this is what's been conducted, and that's what the TMF is. So,
and I mean, frankly, that's what got us into the TMF, is because I think in a lot of cases it even came down to, study managers thinking, oh, I told the CTA to file this, or whoever, or some other functional line saying, oh, I told my person to file this. You assume it's done. And, this is just that extra step of making sure that you're meeting that regulatory requirement. So, yeah, it's important to remember that, even if it's just something little, it can be a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So we'll shift gears a little bit and talk about a different skill here. So why is time management so important as a TMF professional? I know we talked about this when we first opened that at some of the entry level roles or those roles that, as I like to say, are kind of more in the weeds where you're doing more of the filing and QC and migration. I think time management becomes a really critical piece of this. So Tab, I don't know if you want to take this one and start.
Yeah, sure. I can just. Actually, when during the time of study startup and close out, we really see there is a lot of documentation being filed during that point of time, and yeah, and when there is and specifically when there's a mock inspection or something like that is notified, so during that time they start to upload a lot of documentations. So commonly, when we are working with different studies, we have different timelines. So it is really important for us to manage the time, so that we can dedicatedly specify, for specific studies we need to have some specific time, rather than spending a lot of time just looking at one document and trying to find it out, where it goes, really which artifact we have to classify.
Yeah.
Sometimes that, I mean, we just go back and forth, which, I mean, we spend a lot of time. Instead of that, I prefer, like, asking questions, and no questions is like wrong question or anything, is it's rather than waiting for a long time, it's good to ask questions and help, take help from the team members who who are like more experienced, and they can just answer in just few minutes for them. So yeah, that's where we save a lot of time. And of course, like, we shouldn't be afraid asking questions. And if we can't find any guidance on particular artifact, better, we have to dedicate some time for those kind of documents, and there's no shame in asking questions, of course.
Yeah, I love all of that, and I love how it actually tied back into communication. We can see how all of this is kind of weaved together and really interrelated. Like I think that that is a really great point that you can really save yourself some time and create some efficiencies when it comes to time management perspective by asking questions, not being embarrassed that you've come across a document that you don't know and feeling like you're going to be judged for it, like just going and raising that. I will tell you 90% of the time, if you're working on a study with a bigger team, it's likely that someone else on the study has probably seen the document and had the same question. And that's one of the things with TMF too, that I'll point out here. I think is just that piece of like consistency. I think so oftentimes people come into TMF and are looking for that like right answer, and there's only one way to do, or think there's only one right way to do things. And I think a lot of times with TMF we're working in somewhat of a gray space, and I always like to highlight to people that it's there are kind of many different approaches to TMF management and ways to file even one document type. You might see different
Yes.
organizations take different approaches, but as long as each organization is doing what they're doing consistently and making sure that like as we make decisions on documents that
Mm.
that's being documented, say in like our index, and that gets communicated out to the broader team. And again, this is another reason why communication is so critical, because it's if one person has a question and then we raise that to the group, we make a decision on how we're going to file a document that, then moving forward, now we have buy-in from everyone. Everyone's on the same page, everyone's aligned. So it's you can actually be doing a benefit to your team by bringing up questions or documents that you don't know. Like you say, you can save everyone on the team time. So
Yeah.
I think that's great.
And another point that Tap made was about, not being afraid to ask questions. And, it comes to part of something you mentioned with one of the earlier questions where, some of us really like that investigative part where, you know what you need to find and you're doing some investigation and trying to dig through it. But that's the only reason that can sometimes cause you to go down a rabbit hole. You're going to start researching this and then you're going to spend too much time on that. Sometimes you just need to put that limit and say, I've already spent 5 or 10 minutes. I need to move on
Just
because I'm
make a
spending too much
decision
time on
and
this one document. So
Right.
that's why you should ask the question going forward. But it's so there are a lot of great points you made. That's just one that I happen to think about.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So.
All right. So after a career break, what skills do you recommend focusing on in order to come back to the TMF universe? Ooh, I love that. The TMF
That's
universe
really good.
and apply for a job. So I think that there are a lot of skills actually that are applicable to the TMF space that you can really highlight when you're looking to come in. I think we've touched on some of them. Obviously, communication has kind of been a big one that we've talked about, time management. I also think things like attention to detail or like being very like quality focused is a big one too. So just really having quality at top of mind all the time, that we want to make sure that from even that point that that document is generated, that we are keeping in mind what quality standards that document's being held to. So I think any other out of positions that you've had where really making sure that, like I said, we're very quality focused, making sure that we are effectively managing our time in order to deliver like a high quality product, stuff like that, I think is really good. I think also, trying to think anything around any other like trainings or things that you've done, even more broadly, just in clinical research, can certainly help translate to the TMF space. I think that that's one of the areas that we see sometimes people struggle with that are coming into the TMF space that don't have a clinical research background. I think doing some just general kind of clinical research training, just getting familiar with the clinical trial process, the different phases of the clinical trial, kind of how trials are run overall, is something really good that you can develop in a break, and then bring back to kind of highlight some of that development that you've done and just generally in the research space. Um,
Absolutely.
Anything else you guys can think of?
Jackie, I think we have the in our LMK itself, we do have those courses, and those are really wonderful. Like if anybody wants to join those courses, like we have like certain level, like entry level and the mid level and the managers level by IOACR. Those are like wonderful, those courses,
Yeah,
those
that's a great
certifications. Yeah.
great point there, Tav. Thank you for throwing that in there. Yes, we do have our Team of University program,
Yes.
which is specifically designed to equip people with
To,
the knowledge, skills, and behaviors to be a successful TMF professional. Everyone on our LMK team has completed that program. So, yeah, that's definitely another option there as well for development. Um, yeah, thanks for
The only
throwing that
thing I
out
would
there.
add is just, and you're probably gonna, I'm beating a dead horse here, but I said the fundamentals, kind of like going back to, I don't know, reviewing the TMF reference model just to familiarize yourself with some of those documents again, just to remind yourself of the different zones or just the different areas that, you might be working in depending on what position you're looking for. I'm always, well, that's one other thing that I might want to mention for them too.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right. So, what's one soft skill that has surprised you that you needed as a TMF professional?
mm,
And I don't know if it's a surprise, but I mean, it's one that, well, not necessarily that it's not a surprise, but I think, interpersonal skills are really important, obviously, depending on your position, because every person works and learns differently. And it's how you communicate with those people with those skills. You want to have consistency among staff, but we also need to use our skills when dealing directly with multiple employees. I mean, sometimes we need to use different forms of communication depending on how those individuals respond to those communications. I think that's one of the most important. I could also say that I think Jackie had mentioned this before about interpersonal skills. A lot of people do falsely assume that TMF professionals exist in the shadows. and things like that. And you could probably tell a little more about that, Jackie. But I just know that there are just some interesting ways to look at that. But I mean, if you wanted to talk about that too.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think people assume that if you work in TMF, all we do is, I mean, back when I first started, everyone just thought we were the people kind of sitting in file rooms, putting papers into folders. And now we've moved to eTMF. Everyone assumes that we just kind of sit behind a computer, just putting things, again, in electronic folders. And there's really so much more to it than that, that I really think that we are the ones that need to be the advocates for the TMF, for the importance of the TMF. Like I said earlier, we need to be the TMF cheerleaders. And I think also, too, one thing that surprised me a little bit, and especially now having been in the consulting arena for the last 8 years or so, was just how many different approaches there are to TMF in industry. There's different resourcing models. Some companies you find are primarily outsourced, some are in-house, some are kind of in this transitionary period where they're bringing some of TMF back in-house. So really being able to be kind of flexible and adaptable and know that like not there isn't one right way to manage a TMF, and it may look different depending on the resources available, whether your TMF management is in-house or outsourced. So really being able to be um, flexible. I think Jen, you touched on this earlier, kind of like active listening and really trying to get your hands around how an organization or a team works in TMF management, and trying to work with them in whatever approach that is, and rather than kind of trying to put everyone in one kind of box and treat everyone in the same way. So that for me was a big kind of learning curve, is like really just like sit back and listen and kind of see how people are approaching it. What are the pain points? And then kind of be creative when it comes to ways to kind of manage the TMF or engage our stakeholders, stuff like that. So, like I said, keeping an open mind. I think we see TMF space kind of constantly changing, and like I said, there's a lot of different approaches. So being able to be flexible and adaptable was one thing for me that was definitely an eye opener. All right, I think we have time, looking at the clock here, for maybe one more question. And then we'll kind of close it up. All right. So, are there any changes for the industry that you see upcoming? So, I can say personally, so I've gone to several of the conferences in the last year. I've been to both of the CDISC, the TMF interchanges. I've also went to the TMF summit this year. And I think it's a really exciting time for TMF. One, I think we've seen over the past several years, TMF really taking kind of more of a main stage position. Like people are definitely giving it more attention than it's had, which I think is fantastic. I think the move of the reference model under CDISC will have a great impact, seeing the movement for that becoming a standard. I know we've already seen very broad adoption of that in industry, but moving to make that a standard, I think will be really critical. You mentioned AI. I think AI and machine learning will definitely have an impact on the way that we work. I think it will transform some of the skills that different individuals need in the TMF space. Like I said, I know there's been some concern that AI or machine learning is going to take jobs. I think it's just going to change the jobs that we do every day. I think that we will likely see AI and machine learning start to maybe do some of like our step one QCs or that kind of initial, but I think we always are going to need that kind of human in the loop, if you will, that has that broader knowledge of clinical trials and can look at those tricky documents and make decisions and things like that. So I do think we're at a really exciting point. I think we're going to continue to see the TMF space grow and provide additional opportunities for individuals looking to make it a career, which I personally think is fantastic. Yeah, great question.
And I do agree with you that AI is moving in, but I really don't think it's going to replace everything. I mean, there's things that, you know, that that AI can't do, like that personal, that last double check of a document or certain things that are important. So I think it's helping, but like you said, I don't think it's going to replace us all. I don't think there's any way it
Completely.
can with certain
I
things.
agree with you, Jen.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
So I know we are at the end of our session here. So I just want to take a minute just to thank my co-hosts today, Jen and Tap, and also just thank everyone who joined us on the live stream and for those of you who submitted some great questions. We really hope that you found the information that we shared helpful for your own personal career journeys. If you have any additional questions, feel free to submit them to our hello@lmkcrc.com inbox, and we'll be sure to get back to you. And also be sure to join us for tomorrow's TMF Career Week session, where my colleagues Ben, Raji, and Krishna will be discussing TMF technical skills. So thanks again, everyone. And we'll talk to you all soon.
Great chatting. Nice to meet you all. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.